Hello everyone and welcome to today's training session. And this one is technical in D365 finance and operation. And we will be covering in this training session about data structures in D365 FinOps. And when we talk about data structure, in particular to D365, so the data structure does not only cover, tables and views, and you already know some of you might not know who are new. Tables are basically containers to hold data in a organized fashion, like in column and rows. So a matrix kind of style is called table, and views are just like windows to those tables, or you can call it a query as well. Views themselves do not store any of the data. It is just like a window to multiple tables or maybe a single table. And in fact, it is a query, but it is basically showing you or displaying you the data uh, while combining it from multiple tables. So that is called a view. And the professionals who have already worked in for example, SQL Server or Oracle DB, they already knew about views. So that is just like a query, and there is definitely overhead over the performance when you use a view. But view helps us to simplify the structure of data when we need it readily somewhere in maybe in the code or somewhere to display it on the form. So views help more than tables, and tables definitely tables are same tables like in SQL Server or Oracle DB. So they are container to hold the data in field or and rows style or a matrix style. So this is for new developers in order to give them an idea. And definitely the rows in this way holding inside a table do have indexes in order to sort them, and whenever you query them, so those are in efficiently manner retrieved from the DB. So these are basically table and views. So when you talk about data structure, so data structure does not only mean table and views, but basically the things which are helping in forming or creating these tables and views. So that is called overall basically a data dictionary. So so the people who have already worked in in previous versions of D365 FinOps, that is AX 2012 or AX 2009, they already know that these are basically there are so many data structures like base enums are there, and then there are EDTs or extended data types, basically user defined data types, which are extending the the primitive data types like integer, real, string, and these are basically primitive data types. Then you extend these primitive or built-in data types into your extended data types in order to facilitate your functionality. It can be a customized label, or it can be customized help test, or any of the other property like length of a string. And in this way, like decimal places in a numeric value, if you need a 2 decimal or 3 decimal, so you can customize the properties of EDT, which are basically custom data types when you extend it from primitive data type. So normally all of things are almost same like previous version, and we will definitely cover that one also. And basically there are code patterns, design patterns are also the things which are recurring, a solution to existing problem. And then there are patterns like code patterns or data model patterns or user interface patterns. So those can also be used in D365 finance and operations. So for example, when we talk about data model, So for example, talking about a vendor or customer list, so both are similar almost. If you have functionally seen it in vendor or customer forms, so almost these are the same list. So I can show you. I am inside Visual Studio. So on in the AOT you can expand data model and tables, and then you can just go to, for example, vend table for vendors and cust table for customers. So once you see that table, you can see on the right hand side the properties window. So it is showing you a property called table group. So this is a very important property. Basically, it is determining the type of table or a category of a table. So basically, when you talk about these tables which contain the basic information or list of vendor or customer or items, so these are called main tables. So whenever you create a main table or you deal with a main table, so that is of type of table group main. So means vendor table here is main, which consists of vendor information. You can open even in the table browser, it will show you the list of vendors. So basically it will ask you to open in a browser. I will just uh, open it. Meanwhile it is opening, let me also show you the cust table. You can just type and it will directly search for you. And so I will show you now. This is a list of vendor table, and it is showing the account number and other fields in the vendor table. So this is kind of a table called the main table group. So these kind of tables which are holding the list of certain information like vendor or customer or items. So these are tables of table group main. So this customer table, you can see also it is having the same property. Table group is main kind. And then I will also show you like invent table. And in the invent table, so the table group is again the main table. So whenever you talk about list of information like vendor or customer or items, so those are treated as the main table. So similarly, if you also create your own functionality and you are having a list of certain information, so those can be treated as a table group of main tables. And then definitely this will help us in forming user interface as well, a particular style of form to data for the data entry purpose. And now we talk about what about worksheet tables. So worksheet tables are basically two types, like order headers and order lines. So this kind of pattern are normally for that information that has a particular header and then multiple lines. For example, a purchase order. Purchase order can have common information in the header table called purch table. So I will show you. This is a purge table, and then once you open the property, the table group is called worksheet header. So this kind of table which are holding like order information with the pattern like header and lines. So this is called a worksheet header and worksheet line table. So purge table and then purge line. Let me show you. This is a purge line, and once you go to table group, so the value is here worksheet line. So same is with sales table. So this will have the worksheet header. So the type here is, or pattern here is worksheet header, and for the sales line will be worksheet lines. So this is a worksheet line type of a pattern used for the lines level. So these are worksheet tables having various order information, having common information in the header and then multiple lines in that. Then there is each of these table group is definitely associated with the particular style of form for the user interface, as I have told you, for the data entry purpose. This will help uh, in deciding about the form or data entry form used for user interface, which one will be used for what table. So that is important information we need to put here. So then we can also see even other table group types. So those table group type I can show you just by extending, or I will create a new solution. Just give it a name like data structure, and now right click on it and just add a new item, and in the new item go to the data model and just create a table, and we'll just delete it. We'll just try to understand the table group property. So now this table is created, and now we can see in the properties. So once I select the table, then I can go to the table properties, and in the table properties I can select here table group, and you can see now there are different values here, just like base enum. Base enum is basically a list of value or a lookup which is showing you multiple values. So we will start with miscellaneous. So what is basically a miscellaneous? Miscellaneous is always used, this table group is always used for temporary table. Temporary table for the new developers is must to understand that there are three kind of table types. So I will just show you. There is one more property here. This is called a regular table type, and here you can find that there are three basic type of a table. One is called a regular, then in memory, and temp DB. So what is difference between these three table types? I have also explained in my other technical video somewhere that the regular type is to keep a persistent data for a longer period of time, and this will hold the data until it is deleted or it is truncated. So it will hold the data. What about in memory and tempdb? Basically both are same, except one difference is tempdb will basically hold the data in a tempdb in SQL Server, and this is for normally the tables which are for report running, like RDP, report data provider based reports. They are using tempdb based tables. So that will hold the data until the display of the report. Once report is displayed, the data will be wiped out. What about in memory? In memory is also holding the temporary table, but this will hold the data in RAM itself. So it is not recommended until you are for sure that the limit of the records is very low, and that can be, for example, a 500 or 1000 records maximum. So if it exceeds more than that and you cannot predict, so it's always better to create a tempdb based table when it is holding a temporary data. But if it is holding a persistent data, that is to keep a data until it is deleted or you require it to be deleted, so then it need to be having a regular type. So this is three types here. So we were talking like when you keep it like tempdb, At that time, what table group you need to select is miscellaneous. So miscellaneous, this kind of table group is always selected when the table is of kind tempdb or temporary tables like in memory tables. So that miscellaneous will be chosen in that case. What about there is another second one is parameter. Parameter is basically containing a table of contents like structure. So what does that mean? That it will hold only a single record. Single record is very surprising. Why would a table keep a single record? So normally there are certain tables which will hold the single record. So if I can show you in the normal interface of D365, there are for each of the module like accounts payable, account receivable, or any of the module. Once you go in the module itself, so there is parameter form. So basically this parameter form will not have a list of records. So once I click it, it will show you a single record. So these kind of table which are holding single record will have the table group type of parameter. So this is only just working just like a switchboard. So if you choose a certain value or if you turn on or off a certain uh, uh, certain yes no type of switch here, you are just turning on and off the switch here, so a particular functionality will be enabled based upon this main switchboard. This works just like a switchboard. That's why it's holding only a one record. It is not necessarily can have more than one record. So this kind of parameter based tables will have the value of parameter. So that means to keep a single record of parameter. So then there is a type of a group. So what does that mean? That is basically for simple list or simple list and details with a list grid. So this is basically used for just like supporting table for drop down list. The simple list design pattern also is suitable for when only a few fields are required. Otherwise, the simple list and details pattern should be used so that fields are presented in a useful way to the user. Then, there is basically a so this kind of data, this kind of table, which is basically of a table group type of group, can be having a fewer fields. So that can be an example like vendor group. Vendor group is having table group of group. So why is that? Because it is having only few fields. You can see only how many 8 fields are there in vendor group. Same is case with customer group. If you go to the table group here, so it is basically having the group uh, table group property value of group. So same is for example, if you go to here tax withhold authorities. So this is also having this is basically localization table. So anyhow, the table which are holding a few fields will only have this kind of group. Basically, that is a group of vendor or customer, or if you create any other feature, then there can be a list of information like a vendor or customer, and then there can be a basically grouping of that list. So that grouping which is holding only common values and holding only few fields, that can have the table group property of group. So then there is basically another table group kind. Let me show you. So after group there is a main type. this is already explained that main type is for like main list of information can be a customer, can be a supplier, or can be an item. So same is if you create a new feature. So in that case, for example, if you create a vehicle management system, so the vehicles, the list of vehicle table will hold the information or table group value of main, but the grouping of like vehicle group will have the table group property of group because it is a grouping or classification of those vehicles. In same way, if you create a facility management system, so in the facility management system, a property type or a resort type, basically the resort themselves will be the table containing the resorts or properties in a facility management system will have table group of main, but their classification table will hold the value of group here in the table group property. So in this way, I hope that now you understand the basic difference between miscellaneous. Miscellaneous to have the first one will have for the temporary table like in-memory table or tempdb table. The parameter table group will have only one record like the parameter of a particular module, the existing module or the new module if you create it, and it will hold the information just like a switchboard, like a single record in order to keep certain setting or to enable or disable certain feature in a module. So this table group will have the pattern or the table group property of parameter, and then there is a group which will hold the fewer fields just like a classification of a list like vendor group or customer group or item group or uh, property group or can be a vehicle group or vehicle classification, and the main list will hold the value of main in that case like a vehicle table or like a vendor table, customer table or invent table having the item master information. So that will uh, hold the value of main. So until now we have explained four things. Now what about the transaction? So basically transaction will have the simple list and detail with standard tabs. So basically this is used for the tables such as inventory transaction table. So that will have only a single table, not having a like header and the line. Otherwise, if it is having header and line, then there are two more categories which are called transaction header and transaction line. So since invent trans table is having only the single record, not record but pattern, single pattern, single list of transactions, so it will hold the value of transaction. So let me show you. Basically invent trans is a table holding the records which are for the posted transaction normally. So whenever an issue of inventory or receipt of inventory happens, so it goes into this table. So there is one table invent trans and invent trans origin, both are interconnected. So partial information will be held in one table and the other one will be held in another table. So here you can see the table group information, the table group value here is transaction. Basically it is having only a single interface, not like header and line. So if it is having a header or and line information, so as I told you, it will hold transaction header and transaction line. Let me show you once again. So transaction header and transaction line for the tables having posted transactions and having a common information as a header, and then there is a specific information in lines. So that kind of table can be, for example, invoice journal. Invoice journal can have that kind of information. So I can show you like if we can go to cust invoice jar. So cust invoice jar is basically a header of posted customer invoice. Customer invoice once posted, the header will go to cust invoice jar. So we can see here that basically here it is table group is still a transaction. In fact, it should not be transaction. Cust invoice trans. So here we are in the cust invoice trans. Again, it is using basically a transaction. So let me go to the invoice journal. So it is also having the table group of transaction. We can understand that transaction header and transaction lines are used for the purpose when there is a posted transaction containing information like header and lines pattern, then it will be used. So what about the so now what about worksheet header and worksheet line? So basically we have just checked in a ledger journal table and ledger journal line that it is using this information worksheet header and worksheet line. So this kind of table group is used for data entry data sets such as purchase order. We have seen that purchase table and purchase line. So basically that is having header and line tables. So that pattern is having two views, a list view of header records and detail view where the focus is in the line. And then there is a worksheet. Basically worksheet is single level data entry data set, which is also very rarely used, but that is also used. So basically what is difference between worksheet header and line? It is the same, just like a transaction and transaction header and transaction line. That means that a pattern which is using a common information in header and line will have the header and line like pattern like worksheet header and worksheet line. But if it is having single pattern, single not having a parent and child relationship, only a single record, so it will have the worksheet in that case, not a header and line. In same way, transaction and transaction header and line. And transaction header line is for posted, and for unposted it is worksheet header and worksheet line and worksheet. So this is, I hope this is easy now. Once we have clarified these kind of information, and then there are certain other also like reference which is normally used in number sequence or data which is basically created before we can set up the setup information. So that is used, table group is used for that purpose. So in this way, and then staging is for data management framework, DMF. For staging table is basically a buffer zone or buffer tables where we can keep temporary information. For example, if we are sending it from D365 to an external system, so it will keep in those staging table, and then it will transmit from staging to the external system. In the same way, if we are importing the data, it will first keep in staging, then we will just import into the regular table. In this way, this is a kind of staging table group. So I hope this is now understandable, the explanation which I have given. If you have any doubts, you can just put your comments or feedback under this training video. And then now we will just cover enumerated types basically, and I will just create an enumerated type here. And to start with, I will just delete this one, the table which I just created to explain you, and I will just create a new item or add a new item. And if I go to the data types, so in the data types I can see there are certain data types available here, and these are normally all are EDT is extended data type, as I told you, user defined data type, extending a primitive data type. So then there is a base enum type. So I will just explain to you. Just let me create one, just PKR, and I will create a facility management system, and in that I will create a resort type. You can see the folder is already created when I created a base enum, and here in my canvas or workspace, once I click it, it is showing me certain properties on the right hand side. One is a label, and then there is a style which is combo. Radio button. Radio button is now obsolete. It is no more used in interface of D365, but still I don't know why they are giving this style as well. And basically the combo box is normally best practice to select from the combo box, and then there is a literal property of literal. So we will not be using all these properties. So on the left hand side you can see what is basically base enum. So base enum is basically an enumerated type which is normally used, for example in C sharp it is called enumerated type, but in D365 or X++ it is called a base enum. So basically both are referring to the same enums, and basically enum is an integer type, and it is a subset of an integer, and but it is not an integer. In fact, actually it is not having values like ones and twos and threes, but those are in the shape of literals or a symbol which can be used in the code to control the logic. So basically, and these can be used, for example, when you need to compare, in your if logics, or when you are using switch case statement. So always it is recommended to use base enums instead of comparing a text value to a text value. So it is not a best practice at all, because a text value which you are comparing a hard coded text with a record value, or the data entry has been done in a table, and you are comparing that data entry value with a hard coded value. So imagine when a company is not set up and you are creating a new company. So maybe that literal or string can be a capital letters, can be a small letter, can be in whatever form. So it is a loose end, it is not an accurate comparison. So always use, base enums whenever you need to compare, certain parameters, certain values. So base enum is always suggested. So always use a base enum in that case. So it can also be used as a field in a table that provides a fixed drop down list to the user. So drop down list, just like a lookup list. Lookup list can be, for example, I will just show you. Just go to the parameter. So here you can see this list. So this is what? This is a lookup or drop down list. So basically, and also you can see here, this is a lookup list. So once you select a particular value here, so that specific functionality will be enabled. So then you can also compare that value in your code by the comparing the field value with the base enum literal or base enum value. So that can be a more accurate comparison. So in the same way, there are certain values which are just like this one. This is just a record which is entered in a certain table. This is not an enum value, but this is an enum value. This is a fixed, feature. It is not a data entry value. And same is case with this one. This is also a fixed value entered as a base enum. And same is data entity behavior here. So in this way, these are basically base enum. This is also a base enum, and this is also a base enum. This is not a user entered data. So these are base enum. Basically, at the back end, these are an integer value, but in front end, it is a friendly literals or friendly symbols. So these can also be compared in the code more easily. And basically, this one is also a base enum. It is having a value of no and yes. So basically, an EDT can extend a base enum, and in this case the base enum is 0 and 1 or no or yes. So these two values are there. I will show you. If you go to the data type node in AOT, so in the base enum you can just type here no and yes. Now you can see there are no there are multiple base enums with the same values like no, yes, and once you click no, it is having a value of 0, and there is a certain label code shown here which is representing a no. So basically the name is which is used in the code for comparison with the double resolution operator, and then this is a integer value, and then if you go to yes, so it is having an integer value of 1 and with the name of yes, but the label shown is here. This is a sys label and it is also representing same literal like yes. And then there is a no yes combo, and this style is a different style. So style, in the style you can see the combo box is selected here, but in the no yes also the combo box is selected. So this one is basically an obsolete. It is not marked an obsolete, but this is also used. And then there is no yes error, and there is a third value here, error with a value integer value of 2. So the label here is also an error. So this is a kind of base enum. Now I will show you one more example from EDT. That is basically extending a base enum type. So this is basically an EDT no yes type, and if you can go to the property enum type property, it is extending a no yes enum basically. So no yes enum is extended in base enum type. Basically when you declare this base enum, so at the back end the base enum I mean this EDT, so at the back end of this EDT the base enum is no yes is used. So in this way this explains, I hope, the enumerated type. So basically base enums are containing a small number of values also when it is used in a field, and this list cannot be searched or extended by the user. So all the enums have to be defined in data model before we can use them, and can't be defined within a class or a method. Means the runtime concept is not given, like you define a new base enum within your class or within your table method. So it is not possible. So you need to define it in a design time, just like I created by adding a base enum here, and then I can create a new element here. So it will create as many as element I would like here. So that will create here. So I will just create a base enum containing a list of resort type. So just I will use my existing list like this is a resort type of hill station. I will use this one, and for the labels definitely I will need a label file. So let me create a label file. So just I will add a new item here, and go to labels and resources and give it a label name like PKR facility management system labels. And always remember, when you create a label file should be a project specific, and there should be a separate model for each of the project, independent projects. So definitely will be in a model so that it is easy for deployment, and one label file is not referencing to another project, otherwise the dependency will be created. So always create an independent label, and I will create here in English US language. And label file, I would explain why it is used. Basically, uh, who are the people who are new to D365, always remember the D365 is a multi-language system. So it depends upon the user interface language based upon user preference. So if I am Arabic speaking guy, so I can select an Arabic interface by choosing in the option. I will just show you. So because this is an introductory session as well, so it is better to give you an idea. So once I go to the preferences in the user option, you can see the language is given here. So in this one, many languages are available. So what is basically a label file? Whenever you select a different language based upon your native style of speaking, or if you prefer certain language, so you just switch it and the user interface language will be switched to that language. So how it is possible? This is possible by label file, because the same label ID can have multiple translations with other languages. So that label file is basically helping in that way. So in this way, I have created just one label file, but you can create another label file with another language. So, or you can select also the same label file by selecting multiple languages in the same label. Just I will show you. Basically, label is just helping in creating multiple. Here you can see the selected language is only English US. But if I, for example, I put Arabic, so both will be selected here. And if I go ahead and just finish it, so you can see the same name is given here, but only after underscore the suffix of language abbreviation is appended there. So in this way, the same label file can have, you know, labels of different language. So let me now create the label for my base enum. And delete the not needed label files. So now we are in front of our label file. Uh, so we will create our label like there are two fields here, label ID and label. So basically label ID will be put in the property, and then it will translate to the label. And for the description is for your help or comment to understand what basically to explain further about the same label. So we will just put here a resort type. Just put a resort type here, and then we can also create a resort type help text. Defines the types of resorts. Resort types. This is basically based upon location. Based upon location. So these two values once selected, I can just copy the resort type and just go ahead with base enum, and in the base enum the label property here I can just paste it, and it will translate to the label which I have given here, which is basically resort type in the label column. And then I can also put resort type help text in the help text property of the same base enum. So where it is basically here it is in the help, I can put the help text. So in this way I have created a label file, and I have created a few labels which if I need, I can create for another language with the same name, and it will translate once the user choose to select any other language. So in this way, so now let me just select various types here, and then we will just create the labels for them also. So let me enter here like beach resort. Just let me give it beach, and then river. So these the names need to be without space, because this can be wrapped in the code itself. And then there is island and specialty. We'll create two values. Island and then specialty. And then there is another classification based upon cost. So we can also put the same in the if we would like in the same base enum, or we can create another base enum like we can give it the name resort type location wise. And then we can create here the to add the new item. Just go ahead and in the data type you can select base enum and put a name. Cost wise. So the label we can use, except the help text we can use the same label. So we can just copy the label from the previous base enum and just put here, and then we can go to our label file and we can put here resort type help text location for L, and defines the type of resort based upon cost. Yeah, this one is for cost. We'll just copy this and we'll put in the help property. And same way for the other one is location based. So we'll to differentiate we'll put L at the end and we'll copy the same label, and in the location wise we can put the label code here or label ID here. We can save it. So in this way we have basically defined, and then also we need to define the elements. And how many elements do we have? Basically economy, luxury and super luxury. So there are three elements here: economy, luxury and super. So basically now there are and we can also define the labels. We can just go to the label file and we'll define labels for each of the resort. So for example, hill station will have the value of hill station, and beach and river, island and specialty. And what about economy, luxury and super luxury? So once we have defined, we can just copy the ID value to the hill station. It will be hill station, and then beach will be beach, and then river, copy the river, just copy the river, and river is already copied. I will copy the island. Island is copied, and then specialty, specially based resort, and then economy, and then we can go to luxury, super luxury, and we have completed our enums now, and we can just save it. Now what happens now, basically enums are stored as integer in DB database, and then we can assign an integer value to a field based on an enum value. So when the enums are shown to the user, so what D365 FinOps will do, basically it will look this up using enums definition from the field in the user language. If a label is not defined for the user language, the label ID code will be shown to the user. If a label was not defined in the enum element, the symbol my enum value is shown. So definitely label should be defined. Otherwise, the enum that is, for example, this is having an element like economy. So if, for example, I did not define the label here, so what it will show? It will show the enum name here, which is PKR FMS resort type cost wise, colon with the value. So what is the value of this enum? The value is basically here is 0, and then this is 1 and this is 2 value. So basically these are integers with the sequence, they will keep the value. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. In this way these are values, and then there are labels or literals which are defining the text in this enum. There is one more property for when we talk about enum, which is called is extensible. So basically, what is this? This is basically allowing the possibility to extend this enum type. So if, for example, we are a independent solution vendor and we are creating a solution, industry solution. In that case, if we want to allow any other value to be extended by the developers, so we'll turn this is extendable property to true. In this way, we can allow the extension to the enum value. So now we'll start with creating a table and we'll use this base enum in that table. So just right click on the project and add a new item. So in the new item you can go to data model, and in the data model you can just select table, and we will just create here a resort table which will contain basically a list of resource. So it is just like when table or a cust table. So we'll just create this table. So we have just created this table and it is in our workspace now, or the canvas. You can see it, and we need to also select the table group property. Just go to the table group, and as we have discussed that miscellaneous will be used for temporary table, so by default this value is selected here, which is not our required table group type. So instead we what we will select here is the main table group type, which is basically similar to when table as we have discussed. So we'll again confirm. Here we are in the when table, and you can see the table group property is main, and which is for the list of items, or list for the certain table which have the list of certain items. So we have just created this table and it is in our workspace, and there is no field, and there are certain field groups which are by default already created, and these are normally uh, type of auto report or auto lookup. These kind are used when you create a lookup for this table, or when you do certain reports like query based reports. So these are specific field groups which comes by default. So then there is indexes which you can create in order to sort the record in the table. So it need to be very selective, because if you include every field, so it will be very costly and hit the performance. So while retrieving, definitely it will help, but while inserting a record, so it will find its place where it is, and then if there are the table is huge table and with millions of record, and then it will be very huge and costly. So it need to be very careful decision whenever an index is created. Apart from this, the table has a relation node. The relation node is when there is a foreign key relationship with another table, which can be one to one or one to many. Then only you can create the relationships. And then there are, of course, behavior of the table defined in the methods, which we'll cover also. And we'll just start with our EDT, and we'll just try to drop this enum, not EDT but enum. We'll just try to drag and drop. So it is as simple as that. The base enum which you have created, we can just drag and drop. Otherwise, you can just add a new field by right clicking and just add, like here there are different data types. So whatever ADT or enum you have created, so you must be knowing about that type, basically that is extending a primitive type. So like in our example, we have created a base enum, so we would have created a field of enum type. So we'll just create another field for the location wise enum value, and here what we can do is just rename this field like resort type location. So resort type by location, then we can go to the enum type here in the properties while selecting the newly created field, and then we can just type in the enum, which is basically, so this enum is there, and now in this way also you can create without drag and drop, and drag and drop is easy approach. So you just need to then rename the field name here like resort type cost wise, and then in the same manner we can also rename this location wise. So in this way we have created two fields of for the resort type, and one is for cost wise and the other one is for location wise. So what now we can do about this is just we can save it, and since this is a new table, we will just right click on the project in order to synchronize for the changes to take effect on the SQL server. So what we'll do is synchronize database on build, turn it to true. So right now I also want to show you before this option, once we have created table, so what is the current status of SQL, that need to be also understood for the new developers, so that what actually we are doing in a development environment should be very clear for the developers. So right now there is no table in SQL Server, and once we have defined this synchronization as true, so on the next build for the project it will create the table and field. So we'll just go to our database, which is AXDB here, and go to the tables node, and it is alphabetically sorted. It will expand now. So now you can see here that if you can go to P in the alphabetical PK, so you can see here there is no table here. After this one, it should be here because I am renaming it with prefix PKR, so it should be around here. So now what we'll do is we'll turn synchronize database on build true and press OK, and then we will just build our project. So in the output window you can see it, whatever the activity is performed by Visual Studio. It includes X++ compilation, label generation, resource deployment, and apart from this the DB sync will be also included, which normally takes time. So it's better whenever you have a data dictionary changes like table creation or creation of adding a new field into an existing table, or then only you should turn the option of DB sync true, otherwise it will take time. So it is unnecessary to turn it true when there is no data dictionary changes. Database synchronization started, the message has been displayed. We can just go and refresh here. So there are, special things which we need to perform before, there are best practices error, like field should be in a field group. This is also best practice, and then table is missing the group auto report. So that auto report should have the fields. Also the title field not declared. We need to define these properties. Just want to show you a demo like how it is now created. You can just also put a filter here, and when name should contain pkr value, you can just put it in the filter and it will apply the filter. So now you can see that the table is now present here. Once the build is totally completed and DB synchronization completed message appears, so at that time the table is created, but that table does not have any definitely any records. So only there is a table. I will just show you the select query. There is no records, and these are the fields which are now created. There are two fields which we have created, like a resort type cost wise and resort type location wise. And then there are certain fields which are created by the system, that is a primary key value, which is a rec id, that is a kind of 64-bit integer. And then there is a rec version, which will also keep the versioning information for the rec id. And then there is a partition that is related with data partitioning. If you want to segregate your data and making a security or confidentiality by assigning to data partitioning. And then there is a data area id, which is related with the company information or legal entity information. So these four fields are auto generated, auto created by the system. And then rec id is definitely a primary key, and we'll also discuss about these concepts. But for now we need to understand how that information is stored. So right now there is nothing there. So what we can do is, we will create one class. Previously there was a job in AX 2012 and even AX 2009, but now there is no job in D365. So instead of job, if you can go to the code, you can see here runnable class or a job. In the bracket it is written as job. In fact it is not a job, but it is a runnable class within a static method called main. So we'll just create one class in order to test our various functionalities, or to introduce ourselves to enum and other data structure. So let me create it. In the class we will just try to insert one record, and I will show you how we can assign, since now we have only two fields, so how we can assign the values in those fields. So first of all we need to declare a table buffer of the same type which we have created, that is pkr resort table, and just give it a name of resort table. So first of all we need to insert a record in this one. So how we can do that, it is simple, like, and also I should tell you the naming conventions, because this, since it's introduction of programming and X++. So whenever you declare a parameter, always remember that the parameter variable should be with the underscore. So this will define whenever you use that in your code. So it will automatically tell a developer that this is a parameter value. And whenever you declare a variable inside a class, or inside a method of a class, or inside method of a table, then that variable should be camel case. Camel case is normally when the first word need to be small letters, and the next words in that phrase or the variable, those should be initial letter capital. So that is called a camel case, that need to be as per best practice, and you can see in the existing code also the same conventions are followed by Microsoft also. So Now we have declared the table, and now what we need to do is just press a dot, uh, uh, insert a dot. Dot means it will show you IntelliSense, and whenever you want to refer to a field or a method, you need to press put or insert a dot. So once you insert a dot, you can refer to the field name, and that field name was resort type. So resort type cost wise, and that has a enum type. So that resort type, how you can assign, just put an equal to sign. Please also differentiate between single equals to and there are double equals to. So double equals to is always used for comparison, but single equals to is used for assignment in X++. So normally the conventions are just like C++ or Java. So in this one, equals to sign is used, and then how we can assign a value to an enum value. That is very simple. Just put the name of the enum, like in this case it is cost wise. So and then the scope resolution operator or double colon. So this, once you put that, so automatically IntelliSense will tell you the possible enum values or literals. So that is basically literal, not a value. Value means it is a 0, 1 or 2. So here once we put economy, and I will show you economy is here the first element, second is luxury, and then super luxury. So I have put here economy, and what I will do the next, because now I have assigned a value to the field, resort table field, and then I need to also call a method which is known as insert method. Whenever you want to insert a new record, so should be the convention. I mean, first you need to assign the field a value, and then you need to insert, and then there can be multiple fields, but in our example here I have only assigned to one field. And then there is definitely one more thing. For example, you need to also clear the buffer. So that is if it is within the loop. So anyhow, now once we have just need to make this class as startup object, set as a startup object. So what it will do whenever I run this project, so I will just show you, just set it as a startup object, and then you can go to here, you can just directly start and it will run the project. Or you can go to debug menu, and there are two options. One is start debugging, the other one is start without debugging. Both options are up to you, whatever you select. So it's better to start without debugging. And now just I will turn it synchronize database on build as false. Why? Because already the table is created, now no more it is needed. So every time a build happens, so it will not try to synchronize DB next time, otherwise it will take a long time. So now I will just start without debugging here. So once I have started running the project, so the class runner has started in browser, and it's showing that it is now running. The project is now running. So what we need to do is just now once again run the query, and you can see the value has been inserted already. And what the value is there, it is zeros in both the cases because we have assigned the first value. So in any case, that value that has a integer value of 0 when we assign the first value. So now what we need to do is just pass an update statement, and before that we need to select the resort table record. So what we need to do, select for update, and this statement is used whenever you want to retrieve a record for update purposes. So what we need to do is then declare the table buffer here, and this, because now we know already there is a single record, so we are not just putting here a where clause. Otherwise what we could have done, like we can put a where clause here and put a condition, resort table dot resort type cost wise is equals to, now I am using comparison here, so I will just put the same value of enum here, so it will retrieve whatever the records which are having this value. So once it is retrieved, then I need to also check whether there is, an existing table in the table buffer. For that I need to do a resort table rec id check. Rec id should always be greater than 0, and then I will just put curly brackets. In this way I will just remove the clear statement here, and I will use the update method, which is basically used for update of record, and I will assign here another value. So before that, the condition of if should follow a condition inside brackets, otherwise it will give you error, just like it showed me error or syntax error. So what I need to do here is I will not definitely assign the same value, and here now I will choose luxury value. Okay, so now once I choose this luxury value, so what it will do, it will assign, it will assign the integer value of 1 basically. And at the meanwhile I need to show you one more method, which is not a recommended method, but in order to understand more, the location wise field I need to update with like this one. This is an integer value of 1. However, I could have used like here I could have used like pkr fms location wise hill station. Hill station is basically second value, meaning it will have beach will have 0 and hill station is 1, and then island is 2 and river is 3 and specialty is 4. So I could have assigned like hill station in this way, but I could also, it is possible that I could assign it a value of 1, so it will represent the same thing. So let us also check this now, and for this I will just start to run this class and see how it happens. So now we can see that our class runner is there and is running our class, and we need to just check here in order to see the values. Just execute the query once more, and we can see there is no update here. So what has basically happened, cannot edit a record in there, update must be performed inside a transaction. Yeah, very important thing we have missed here, and that important thing is that whenever you perform an update, I will just close the browser and I will show you. So it should be within a transaction, and by transaction means that we need to avoid also the deadlock when multiple persons are updating the record. So whenever you select for update, so always use TTS begin here and then TTS commit. Always use this one. And then we can also use one more structure which is called try catch structure. Try catch structure is like whenever there is a possibility of error, so that error should be avoided using, that error should be handled well in using try catch statement. So try is simply give a keyword of try and then put a catch. Catch can be an error also, and that can be a specific catch or it can be a generic catch. In case of catch, so TTS abort. So whenever a TTS begin starts, so TTS begin should commit once the code successfully executes. If it does not execute and there is an error in between, so it will directly go to cache and then perform TTS abort. So TTS begin either will go to TTS commit or it will go to TTS abort. So now we will again just start with this one, because now it is inside the transaction. So just we will start once again. So now once again we have ran our class, and class runner is running, and now what we'll do, we'll just execute our query in SQL, and you can see now the values are turned from 0 to 1s. So we have used the statement in both the ways, by giving an integer value and also by giving an enum value style, that is a literal. So in both the cases the update is same to the SQL server. So in the SQL table we can see here that the values are ones in both the cases. So in this case we have understood that how enum value is stored at the back end, and similarly if we can extend this experimentation to one more thing, like comparison to multiple values here, that is also can be achieved by comparison operators. Like for example, now what we'll do is we'll just change this example to something like we will just insert one more record, and for that we need to just change this whole example, and just remove these structure, and now what we can do is we'll just select and this time we are selecting it for information purpose, not for update purpose. So we know already there is a record there and it has a value of ones. So what we can do is we can select a rec id. So it's always advisable to use a field list whenever you are selecting something from resort table. So the select statement here in X++ is just like select rec id from resort table. It is just same like in SQL server. So it is similar to that. There is, although there are some differences, but those are very minor differences. So once we just select, then we can put a where clause in which we can put the condition. So for example, in this one, uh, the resort type cost wise, so in both the cases the value is greater than zeros. So what we can do is we can just compare this, that if the value is greater than cost wise economy. So what is your take on this? What value will it return? Will it return some rec id or it will not return a rec id? So this kind of structure is used whenever you want to select a record, and that record I mean in order to check whether this record fulfilling this condition exists, so you just return a rec id value. So if it the record is there, so rec id will be filled with some rec id value of integer 64. If it is not returning any value, so rec id will be 0. So the comparison is very simple. You can see here, like if resort resort table dot rec id is greater than 0, means some record has been returned. So then then execute this, and what I will do here, just I will show the info. And this is for info log. Previously, if people know already, this is to show some text or string value in front of you. So you can just use strfmt string format function, where you can just pass an string value that record was found. So then you can just give a %1 or %2 or %3 in order to just pass or concatenate a value in the variable just after the comma. So what I will do is, uh, since I have already selected a rec ID value, so I need to just pass that rec ID here. So it is simple that I will give like this one, and since there is no other parameter, otherwise I could have separated with comma and put another field, and it would have concatenated in %2. So since I am not using %2, so I will just remove that one. So what it will do, the record was found with a rec ID of %1, means whatever in the rec ID field will be placed here. So definitely there is one record which is is greater than economy, and economy just treat it as a zeros. So means if something is there more than 0 or above 0, so it will just return a record, and we already know here at the back end that there is one record which is having a value of 1. So in this way we can just uh, check our condition, and if else means if the record is not found, then we can just copy paste and record was not found. Simply we will just place this text that record was not found. In this way we have used the comparison, and you can see here. So what it is saying that since we have already used this as extensible, so we cannot use it in comparison operator. So we need to just turn it to false, the is extensible property, then only we can use it. So what we'll do is just click on enum here, and just pass it a false value, save it, and you can see the error has gone. So we'll just start our example now. So basically there are two limitations whenever you use the extensible property to be a true, is extensible to true. So what is that limitation? That we can't use the mandatory property on the fields in order to force a user to select a value. So the first element is probably a 0, which is not valid for mandatory field, means a value should be there, non-zero value should be there. So mandatory property of a field, table field, will not be, we cannot use it once it is extensible. Extensible means that EDT, base enum can be extended, is extensible, and another base enum which is extending from this, so that is allowed. So we can't guarantee a mandatory behavior, and we should not use then is extensible to true. The other limitation is just like comparison, which we were using here in order to compare the value. So when is extensible is true, we cannot compare it to just like we have shown here. So there is some random error sometime. So we'll just start once more. So we can see in info log here at the bottom of Visual Studio, the record was found with the rec ID is also returned here. and that rec id is already present here. That is a unique id or a primary key value. So that is already found, and it has you know uh, showed us in the info log that record has been found. So it means now our comparison has worked in this way, and even we could have put here 0, so it will again do the same thing. So I hope that we have understood this base enum and the creation of table. In my next session I will try to cover more data structures, and up till that time, thank you very much. And if you have any feedback, just let me know.